Save Gordon Pharmacy, now open at 1515 Gordon Street.
Yeah, so I went to the trial a few times and listened to just some of the things that had happened. And what interested me was just the pervasive terror that gripped us all. And, made like small decisions, like, looking at your watch to see when it would be dark and knowing when it would be dark and when you could walk from one place to another place, or, having to drive some young person somewhere because it wasn't safe to walk anymore. And the notion that it is not safe to walk is it's a really difficult thing to get your mind around when you can't walk somewhere. And of course, that is often the case, right? Like, we're never really safe, and we have to always be aware. There's always a sixth sense. I think all women are very aware of that.
Mm-hmm. I just want to ask you about the weather, and in particular the wind, because wind runs through these stories too. At one point, a wind is described as a wind that will rip the features off your face. What is your relationship with the wind?
Well, I went into a gas station and there were two people there who were Newfoundlanders who had come as refugees working behind the counter. And, I asked them some question like, how are you, like in Newfoundland or something? And they were just like, the wind. They could not believe that it was always there. Like, it was always. And I realized it was true. Like, if you're from here, you only are really aware of the wind when there isn't any, which is about like for 5 minutes once a year. So, I mean, it's a curious thing because it is a force that you're always battling. Who knows what that does to a person's soul? I think it toughens it up and makes it strong.
Lisa, so good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila.
Lisa Moore is the author of Something for Everyone, and it's on the long list of the 2018 Giller Prize. It's been another season of raging wildfires burning in British Columbia, California, and Greece. Aaron Williams is an experienced firefighter, and his memoir, Chasing Smoke, is an account of how one fire season unfolds in BC. Here is Aaron Williams.
It's a very tough thing to get a hold on a wildfire, in the sense that winds change, weather changes, certain types of terrain are riskier than other types. It's very hard to prioritize which fires you're throwing the most resources at, just because there are so many of them. Your resources are stretched so thin. The book takes place at our base outside Smithers in a little town called Talpa, and it was kind of neat because that year, 2014, these fires were relatively quite big. The one we worked on the most was the biggest the province had had in 30 years. It's pretty incredible to be close to something like that for an extended period of time and sort of see it from start to finish. I went up in the helicopter one day with my boss, and even from the helicopter, like, as far as the eye could see, you just saw like a wall of smoke. We would show up to one branch of that fire, and it was so enormous that we couldn't imagine that anything we were doing would make much of a difference, really. It certainly felt like one of those fires that only a change of season could really put an end to it.
Aaron Williams talking about his memoir, Chasing Smoke. Candy Polliter is a book lover and book collector. If you're a regular listener, you may remember her talking to me about the challenge of downsizing her huge collection of books when she moved from, is it Halifax to Toronto? God, okay, that's a big move.
It's a big move.
Yeah, it's huge. But today you're going to talk about downsizing on a more psychic level because you're turning 50 soon.
I am. We're months away.
And it's a milestone that's got you thinking about what you have, what you need, what you're going to reread,
and most importantly, how much time I have left. So I've always had this weird feeling that I look at my book collection, which is always more unread than read, and I was like, oh, I can have enough time in my life to read my entire collection. Now I'm turning 50. If I'm lucky, my mother lived to 90, my father lived to 86. it comes out, I don't know if I have the time. Am I going to reread? Regular listeners will know Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, my favorite
One of your
book.
favorites, that's right.
For years, read it every year.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since I've read it, because can I give that time up? When the time is limited. So the other challenge that I have besides the reread is, am I going to get into these big series? I have not read Harry Potter. People keep telling me I need to read Harry Potter. I have it sitting on the shelf.
I am really surprised you haven't read Harry Potter, because you're into those big epic series, right?
I am, but neither Harry Potter nor Game of Thrones. And in fact, I let my Game of Thrones collection go. I started the first book. I'm not a fantasy person. I'm not science fiction. And I had to say, you know what? I'm turning 50 in December. I don't think I have the time in my life to read Game of Thrones.
I've got to ask you a question before we go on. One more second. Are you freaked out by 50?
I'm not freaked out necessarily. I remember, my mother was not the kind of person who gave unsolicited advice. She very much felt like she had 7 kids, and she said, your children have to live their lives. The only unsolicited advice my mother ever gave me, and she told it to me more than once, she said, sweetheart, don't dilly-dally. It goes very fast. Mm-hmm. She said, yesterday I was 17, today I'm 80. I don't know how that happened. So I've always had this sense of how fast it was going to go.
It does go faster.
It really does. What's got me a little freaked out about 50 is the fact that I still feel emotionally and intellectually about 28, but physically, because I have extreme arthritis, I feel about 72. So I feel like my real life age is falling somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. The thing that's got me freaked out about is, I plan to be as big as Oprah before I died. 50 is here. I'm still pretty far away from Oprah.
Yeah, but 50's the new 40.
So true. To
me, so give yourself another 10.
I'm calling it the new 25.
All right.
Quite frankly.
See? Okay.
And, everything is going along great, but in the reading world, it's got me worried about, I was 25 before I read my first Indigenous book, right? So big reader from way back. But I keep thinking about the fact for the first 25 years of my life, I only read white writers. So now, you got to be a really good white writer for me to make room. I'm really, because I'm really trying to read not just my own people, not just Indigenous people, but I'm trying to read from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And that makes books that I would usually jump at as soon as they come out go further down the list. But I love reading, joyful reads, just pleasure reads. Mm-hmm. So I still have to make the time for that. So I'm in the Louise Penny series, which I came to late. A CBC listener, when I had my radio show, said to me on the phone, you read Louise Penny, of course. And I said, no. And his response was, what's wrong with you? So I got into it, and I love them.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
I really am seriously, I'm not being funny, I'm really seriously concerned about how much time I have left in which to get everything done I want to read.
So were you one of those kids that you were taught to finish everything on your plate? You had to finish your book. You had to stay in the movie theater because we paid for it and you're going to see the end of the movie.
I'm a rather robust and bodacious lady. So yes, finishing everything on my plate was something I learned
and
very early.
Plates.
Yes, yeah. But I'm also a bit OCD in terms of I have to finish one body lotion before I start the next. I have to finish one bottle. I have 50 bottles of perfume, but I finish one. So to leave a book unread, it gives me an eye tick.
Yeah.
It gives me an eye tick.
Yeah.
But I find now, with this time crunch, I'm having more thoughts of, you know what, I don't think I can finish this book out now. It makes me a different kind of reader than I used to be.
I find it really hard not to read to the end, but I'm learning. I'm older than you are, so I am learning that. But you are giving me wisdom here about pushing things down or maybe right out the door. How do you decide what's going to make it across the line, the finish line?
I think for me, there's a couple of things. Am I looking right now for just something for joy? And if so, is this something I know is proven? Or is this going to add to my life? So I have this life theory where I'm really, there's a human being I have in my mind that I'm trying to become. And I had pictured her from the time I was young, and my parents were very big on telling me, do whatever you want for a living, we don't care. What kind of human being you're going to be, that we care about. So they always told me every decision you make has to bring you closer to that human being. I never let that get too deep into my reading world
now I am letting it get into my reading world. Is this going to add to who I want to be? Is this going to bring something to me that's positive? And if not, it's got to go.
See you, bye.
What's hard is I have nieces. My nieces and nephews are almost my age, so they all have children. And I have one great niece who's a reader. And there's books I remember loving. And some part of me wants to reread before I give. But I think, do I really have time right now to reread My Darling, My Hamburger? I'm not sure. You know, I'm not sure when that's sitting on the nightstand next to Middlemarch that I've got necessarily the time. And you know how much I love my Trixie Belden.
I do. But, you know, you mentioned Middlemarch, and one of our other columnists, Randy Boyagoda, said that's a book he rereads because every time he rereads it, he sees himself differently. And the characters that he identifies with, he also sees them differently because of where he's at. So it's a book that has been informing him through his life.
And I think books can do that. There's one for me by Susan Power called Grass Dancer. And every time I read that book, it's a completely different story. It's a collection of short stories done in a typical Indigenous way, in that the reader not accustomed to Indigenous ways might think those stories are connected, but all those stories are actually telling you an overarching story. I've given it as gift many times, and I've always said when I've given it, hey, read it. If it doesn't touch you, tuck it in your nightstand and pull it out 2 years from now and read it again.
That is awesome. So does this mean you are still downsizing?
I am still downsizing. What are those little community libraries called?
Yeah. I think they're called little community libraries.
Little community libraries. Well, everyone in the Toronto area is probably thinking, where are all these music biographies coming from? Because we loaded the trunk of our Chrysler 300 and drove to every one of those and piled them full of rock biographies, because I have decided I don't have time to reread rock biographies.
Here you are wearing the most rock and roll cap I've ever seen in my life. There's leopard print, there's studs coming out of it, and it's bright pink.
Yeah.
You are rock and roll.
You
don't need to read about rock and roll bios. You are it.
It was tough, although I did keep my Motley Crue rock and roll bios. I couldn't let those
Excuse
go.
me, you mean Motley Crue?
Yeah,
that's right.
I just couldn't let those go. But again, it's one of those things where also if a new rock biography comes out that is ghostwritten, I'm not reading. I have so much respect for people like Biff Naked and Dee Snider who wrote the books themselves that now, again, with this time crunch, I'm saying, you know what, my rock gods and goddesses, unless you take the time to write that for me yourself, I'm not going to take the time to read that for you.
Candy, thank you so much. Thank you for your very candid sharing of where you are right now in your life as well.
My pleasure.
Candy Palmater is a comedian, and she's also writing a book that's going to be published next year, which we're going to talk about.
Yes, I'm still holding you to the fact that you have said you're going to be my book's godmother.
I am the book godmother. to you. You bet. It's a deal.
Thank you.
Bye, Candy. And that's it for today's program. Jacqueline Kirk is our producer, with Lisa Matthews and me. And thanks this week to Laura Antonelli. The executive producer of CBC Books is Tara Mora. Coming up next week, motherhood. Inside Sheila Hetty's dilemma about whether or not to have children and what that means to her identity as a woman. And Harold Johnson and a portrait of his brother in the memoir Clifford, a fiction, a fantasy, a thought experiment. Harold recalls the past and growing up in a log cabin in the forest with his silent Swedish father and his strong Cree mother. And he mixes different kinds of storytelling as he immerses the reader in the life of this family. I'm looking forward to speaking with Harold next week, and I hope you'll join us. I'm Sheila Rogers. Thank you for listening to the next chapter.
This is CBC Radio 1, 89.1 FM in Waterloo Region.
It starts with an idea.
Thursday on CBC.
Saying I will,
And following a dream.
It's never easy.
but nothing worth having ever is.
Will I like your idea?
Will I put my money on you?
I hope so.
I hope so.
I want to. I want to.
Because I had a light bulb moment.
And I know what it takes.
You said I will. I want to say I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
Dragon's Den. New season. Thursday at 8:30 in Newfoundland on CBC. The news is next, followed by Ideas in the Afternoon with Paul Kennedy.
Almost everybody carries a cell phone these days, but a cell phone, among other things, is also a camera, and digital photography is changing our world. We'll try to find out whether anything happens without pictures on Ideas.
From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Tom Barrington. We begin in Ottawa, where the House of Commons returned with some high political drama. Just moments ago, minutes before the start of question period, Liberal MP Leona Leslev announced she is leaving the government benches.
After careful and deliberate consideration, I must withdraw from the government benches to take my seat among the ranks of my Conservative colleagues and join Her Majesty's loyal.
Leslev is the MP for Aurora Oak Ridge's Richmond Hill, north of Toronto. Police in British Columbia say they've made a breakthrough in the death of a Belgian hitchhiker. Corporal Frank Jang is with the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team.
A man has been arrested and charged with first-degree murder in connection with the homicide of Emily Zakalis. Her body was found in an area just north of Boston Bar near Highway 1 on August 22nd.
Sean Ryan McKenzie is a resident of Oliver, BC, and he's currently in custody. Police have also released his photo. They say McKenzie traveled the province extensively. They're hoping people might recognize him and provide details of his movements in August. A 6-year-old girl is safe and back home after she was the subject of an Amber Alert in Saskatchewan. She was in an SUV that was stolen outside a strip mall in North Battleford last night. Corporal Rob King says officers received a tip this morning.
Members of the North Battleford Detachment received information from workers in a remote industrial area within the city limits with a vehicle parked off the paved road in some bushes. Members attended to the area with EMS personnel and located the subject of the Amber Alert inside the vehicle. The child was conscious, taken to hospital, and examined and reunited with her family.
Emma O'Keefe has autism and epilepsy. Police do not have a suspect and say the investigation is ongoing.
The crisis in North Carolina continues. Catastrophic flooding and tornadoes are still claiming lives and property.
North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper says Hurricane Florence and the ensuing torrential rainfall is responsible for 17 deaths in the state, and the danger hasn't receded. Floodwaters continue to rise in parts of North Carolina, and the recovery will take a long time. Our Paul Hunter is in Wilmington.
Well, the good news is the sun came out for the first time today since before the storm, and as well, for the first time since before the storm, there's been no rain, at least in this part of North Carolina, so that's very good news. But there continue to be all kinds of problems, not least flooding, which means that Wilmington, which is where we are right now, is still effectively marooned from the rest of the state. All the roads in and out of Wilmington are closed because of flooding. You've got power lines down still. We've been running into power crews all day in Wilmington who tell us their number one priority is to get the power back up again. Meanwhile, gas stations are starting to open, but there are incredible lineups for them. Some we talked to have been there for 2.5 hours, waiting, hoping the gas starts pumping again. They have no other choice. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Wilmington, North Carolina.
New numbers show Canada's real estate market is picking up in many parts of the country. Nationally, home sales were up nearly 1% in August, bringing sale prices along with them. Our Eric Collins has the details.
The average price of a home in Canada is now a hair above $475,000, about 1% higher than a year ago. Good news as large segments of the Canadian market bounce back from changes made to mortgage rules in the new year. Changes that made it harder for some buyers to qualify for a home loan. Rishi Sandhi is an economist with TD Economics.
So that sent some buyers on the sidelines there and generally held back activity for 4 months or so. So we're starting to see markets sort of shake off that impact.
Prices were higher across much of the country except on the prairies, where they continued to slide. Saskatchewan saw the biggest drop in more than 4%, while neighboring Alberta saw prices decrease more than 2%. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
And that is your world this hour. For CBC News, I'm Tom Harrington.
The forecast for Waterloo Region and Wellington County: sunny today, becoming a mix of sun and cloud later on. The temperature expected to climb to 27, feeling like 32 with the humidity, then clear tonight, becoming partly cloudy near midnight. Fog is also expected to develop overnight. The low will be 16. Mix of sun and cloud tomorrow with a high of 27. It will feel more like 32 with the humidity. The overnight low will be 11. Then mix of sun and cloud Monday with a high of 19, low of 12.
Hello and welcome to Ideas in the Afternoon. I'm Paul Kennedy.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything.
It's been just over a decade since our phones got really smart.
Well, today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it?
Steve Jobs in 2007.
These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
Within a few years, Apple did just that and refined a feature on that phone, one that's changed the way we take photographs.
A whole new camera system built into iPhone 4. And the pictures that we're taking off this are pretty remarkable. Of course, you can do portrait and landscape.
In less than a decade, the smartphone has become our camera of choice. It's a tool of memory, of creativity, and it's encouraged a whole new kind of self-portraiture. Not without controversy, of course. That got my Ideas colleague Lisa Godfrey thinking. What's in your mind, Lisa?
Well, I guess it's just such a massive change of technology, and we kind of take it for granted. It's just somehow crept seamlessly into our lives. For anyone who's not a digital native, it's really such a contrast to the way everyday photography used to operate.
When can I pick up the pictures? Thursday. This Thursday. Okay, make a note of that. Gonna write it down there? I was going to. Yeah. Then let's say Tuesday. If this customer ran a Photomatch store, we'd be introducing him to a brand new picture pickup promise. Photomatch's way of telling you exactly